Hello, thank you for joining us and welcome to our European Championships 2024 preview with myself, Dom Shaw and Scott Wilson, both of the Northern Echo. Now, I'll come straight to Scott because bags packed, passport ready. You're making the trip this weekend. Are we feeling?
Yeah. Do you know So I'm heading out. I'm heading out very, very early on Saturday morning, flying from Teesside to Amsterdam, and then from there into Germany. It's a bit planes, trains, and automobiles, but I think that's what everyone's doing really, because as with all these things, as soon as the tournament starts, prices for everything go sky high. But I was looking. I've been assuming all the time that I can just swan around in t-shirts and shorts, and I looked earlier this week rather, at the weather for next week in Germany, and it's pretty much like it is here, lashing down every day. So,
really?
I think there'll be some slick surfaces out in Germany because it's
the
weather we've been having over here. They seem to be having over there as well. So so I'm going to need some coats, I think.
You mentioned there about making the trip. Actually, Steve Crossman from the BBC 5 Live, who's obviously from the Northeast, is over there. And I'd seen earlier this week on his Instagram that he'd made the trip, and it seemed to take him days. He was dotted around here, there, and everywhere.
Well, I know some of the Scottish lads in our group who work up at the Herald. I've been following them kind of online. Scotland obviously kick off the tournament in Munich, but they couldn't fly anywhere near Munich, just cost-wise and everything. Right. So they flew into Verona, cheeky little bit of Verona, and then got a train up from Italy into Germany. So it's I think it's planes, trains, and automobiles for everyone.
The videos of in the last few days, especially the videos in the various cities, have started to creep out on the socials. Looks great, looks class.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, I was lucky enough to be at the 2006 World Cup in Germany. It was absolutely brilliant. Like they'll make a real good show of it, Germany. You know, a proper football mad nation. Great, full of great cities, great places to go out and have a look around, and then this time around the football should be really good too.
We'll get to Germany because we're going to have a general preview of the various groups and discuss our favourites, our dark horses, and the usual likes. But we'll obviously start with England. Just a heads up to start with, thanks to UFibre, who are sponsoring our Euros coverage over the course of the coming weeks. UFibre are building unbelievable full fibre broadband in the Northeast. You can visit ufibre.com to find out more. Let's start with England then, Scott. Obviously, it's been relatively drama-free in the build-up. The odd injury worries.
Yeah, but it has. I mean, we haven't had any of the real crises that we've had before previous tournaments, have we? But I suspect Harry Maguire's absence, for all the question marks that have been over him over the last couple of years, will actually potentially have a bigger impact than maybe some people are thinking. I think it'll be a miss off the pitch for Southgate, but I think on it as well, in both boxes, in the air more than anything, he gives England a real physicality, and without him, it's going to be interesting to see how things go. Luke Shaw, obviously, the other big question mark, doesn't look like he'll be available for the first game. But yeah, you're right. I mean, what you would term the real key players, so your Kanes, your Bellinghams, your Pickfords, they're all good to go. They're all ready. So I think if you'd offered Gareth Southgate to be in this position just before the tournament, he'd probably have taken it, because the fear in the last couple of months was always that one of your real big stars gets a real problem. And like you say, thankfully that hasn't happened.
We'll get to the strengths and how on earth Southgate manages to fit in his attacking players and who's likely to line up. But we'll start with the defence, because you're touching it there with Maguire. And I guess Maguire's absence is why there was such concern when John Stones missed training. He obviously hobbled off last week, didn't he, in the final warm-up game, and then he missed training this week with illness. I think he's been pictured back out there today, Thursday. But there's understandable concern, because with Maguire out, if you were to lose Stones as well.
Yeah, that would be a massive worry for England. Yeah, I mean, Stones and Guehi, yes, there's question marks over Mark Guehi's kind of lack of experience, and they didn't look particularly great together in the first half of the Iceland game the other night, although I'm always willing to give a bit of a pass to friendlies and kind of warm-up matches. Yes, there's question marks over that, but I think that will be a decent enough central defence. I think if you then take Stones out of it and it becomes a Guehi and a Dunk, then I think there are major worries there for England. I mean, listen, you've touched on it there. England have potentially the best attack at the Euros. They do not have anywhere close to the best defence. And it's which of those is going to be the most pertinent factor, I think, will decide how England do. If England can be solid enough that they pretty much keep teams at arm's length and create a platform for their attacking players to play, there is more than enough talent and more than enough goals in that side, however Southgate lines them up, for them to be a real factor in this tournament. The worry, as it's been really throughout Southgate's reign, is are they defensively good enough to keep a top team out if or when it comes to a knockout stage game, a quarter-final or a semi-final against a France or a Spain or a Germany or a Portugal? Can England be solid enough in defence, or will they just be wide open? There were worrying signs in that Iceland game. I mean, again, as I keep coming back to, it was a warm-up game. Give them a pass on that. But I think there's been worrying signs on that at times in the last year, right through England's games, right, going back to that kind of Nations League capitulation against Hungary. That's going to be the deciding factor for England. Will their attacking strengths outweigh their defensive weaknesses?
And you mentioned there about how, regardless of how Southgate lines them up, how will he line them up then? Because if you were to go through the team, we know Pickford's going to start. We know really the makeup of the defence. If Shaw's out, Trippier's likely to start left back. We know Harry Kane's going to lead the line. We know Declan Rice is going to be in midfield. The question marks really are over where he uses Bellingham. How does he fit Foden in? Does Cole Palmer start? Who plays alongside Rice? It's that area of the pitch, isn't it?
It is that area, yeah. I think Southgate will play a 4-2-3-1. There are definitely arguments that this England team might be better as a 4-3-3. There's even arguments it might be better with wing backs, but we're looking at a flat back four, and I'd be really surprised if, certainly for the Serbia game initially, we weren't looking at a 4-2-3-1. So the big question marks in that is who plays as the three behind Kane, who plays next to Declan Rice. I think the three behind Kane will be Foden, Bellingham and Saka. And I think that means that there'll be no Palmer or Gordon in the starting lineup. I think you can make an argument that both of those players deserve to have a chance. But Foden and Bellingham are absolute nails on. I think for all that there's talk about Saka's kind of end of the season with Arsenal and the little knocks he's been carrying, as long as he's fit and the indications are that he's going to be, I think he starts. I don't see Bellingham playing alongside Rice. Because clearly if Bellingham plays alongside Rice, that then lets you play Foden as a 10. It means one of Palmer or Gordon comes into that team. I think Southgate will think that will leave his England side far too wide open. And even against Serbia, Denmark and Slovenia, teams that on paper England should have the mastering of, I still think Southgate will be really reluctant to leave his side as wide open as that. So is it going to be Trent? Is it going to be Mainu? Is it going to be Gallagher? Or is it going to be Wharton? I don't think it'll be Wharton. I think he's too inexperienced for all that he did really well in the second half of the Bosnia friendly. I don't think it'll be Mainu because I think that Southgate will think he's too inexperienced and he didn't really take his chance against Iceland. I think it comes down to a choice between Trent and Gallagher. Gallagher's probably the safest option in that it's his more natural position and the defensive side of the game he can do. And he's obviously, kind of all action, all energy in there, which Southgate likes. I just have a feeling that he might give Trent a go in this first game. He tried it in the first hour of the game at St James's. Didn't really work, but looked okay. I actually thought Trent looked better when he switched to fullback in the late stage of that game. I think if you play Trent in centre mid, you're losing that kind of 50-yard pass that he pings from one side of the pitch to the other from the right back position, which is one of his massive strengths. But I think he has got an eye for a pass. I think he can dictate the game. He's done it down a couple of times for England against poorer opposition. I remember the game against Malta. He was really good in that position. It's against Malta. I think that might be the way he leans. I think Trent might get the nod.
And that begs the obvious question then, as to how will that progress as the tournament goes on? Because we'll get to the group, but England are clearly big favourites to win that group. And let's envisage that they do make it through to the knockout stages, to the quarterfinals onwards. Would he play Trent then, do you think? If they come up against top-class opposition, the first top-class opposition?
I think if they've played well enough to get through the groups, yes. I think he probably will. He's a manager who while there have been times when he's made changes during tournaments, in general, he tends to stick with what he knows, Southgate, doesn't he? So Shaw will come in for Trippier once he's fit. But I think if England get on a roll and are playing well and are winning matches, I think Southgate will let the team roll on. Now, clearly, if things start going awry and results aren't what they want, then he has a whole load of options in those midfield areas that he can definitely make changes. But I think if England are winning with whoever he starts with, I mean, we saw it, didn't we, with Calvin Phillips at the last Euros, that, you know, there was a load of question marks about whether he would be in the team or not. He played in that first game against Croatia. England got on a roll. Phillips stayed in the team. I think that'll be the case with what we see out in Germany.
Just a couple more on England before we move on and discuss the group in general.
Yeah.
First things first, there's always a player, isn't there, where there's a clamour to get him in, where they're not involved, where they're on the bench, and there's a clamour for them to be starting. Got to be Cole Palmer, hasn't it?
Yeah,
it's
with Jack Grealish for a long time, wasn't it?
Yeah, but Maddison previously.
Yeah, Maddison. It'll be Cole Palmer. If Palmer's not in that starting lineup in the first game and England are underperforming, the argument will be get Bellingham back, create an extra place in that front three, get Palmer into the team and Foden as the 10. Yeah, because, you know, in some ways that feels like you're getting more of England's better players on the pitch. I think it does do that. Like I say, my reservation with that is I think against the top team, you're just wide open through the middle, because for all that Bellingham can play there, it's not his strength, is it? His strength is playing 10, 15 yards further up the pitch than that. So maybe that will be the way Southgate goes. It's not impossible. Like I say, he has played Jude Bellingham in that position before. But I think it's unlikely in a major tournament.
And Southgate, there's been a fair bit of talk about his future again. He's talked about it himself. I think he did in an interview with Bill, didn't he, in Germany?
That's right.
What do you make of that? And what does the future hold, do you think?
I think it's felt like that for a little while, hasn't it? Like I said, I remember those Nation League games, and it was the first time when an England crowd really properly turned on him when they got hammered by Hungary at Molineux, didn't they? And it kind of felt from then that he was probably only one more major failure away from it feeling like the end of the road. It feels like that with this tournament. Now, there's a few caveats to that. You know, as we've seen with England in the past, you can go out of a tournament in really unfortunate fashion, playing really well. I mean, the last World Cup when they lost to France in the quarters, there wasn't an awful lot wrong with England in that game or that tournament. And so there are scenarios where England could exit a tournament and yet Southgate could still have his reputation pretty much intact. I think the FA would quite like to keep Southgate because, he's the safest of safe pair of hands for them. He's done a really good job up till now. Everything around what he's done with England, the FA really like. So I think unless England underperforms spectacularly, I don't think the FA will be massively keen to make changes. But I just get the impression that Southgate himself might be thinking that this is edging towards the end of the road and that actually, this will be his fourth major tournament. If England don't get over the line and win it, then, how much support will there be for him to take them to a fifth tournament? And I think that's in his mind frame going into it.
If you had to put your neck on the line now, will he be in charge for the next World Cup?
I think it's less. I would say probably not.
And at this stage, clearly we don't want to go into this before the tournament starts, but it'd be interesting to see who comes next because there's no obvious standout candidate, really.
No, I mean, if I think the FA will want there to be an Englishman on a shortlist. I'm not saying that they will say that the job has to go to an Englishman, but I think they will want an English manager on their shortlist. And looking around at the minute, I think that would have to be either Eddie Howe or Graham Potter. I think they're the two names that are way, way, way above any other English candidates. So, I've written a piece today and it's had a bit of social media traction stuff from Newcastle fans saying, well, Eddie Howe would be mad to walk away. Why on earth would he go to England? And Howe's kind of distanced himself from that in the past. And I think there's a good, a decent chance that Eddie Howe might decide he wanted to stay with Newcastle. But, if England were to come calling and actually say, we want to interview you, we want you to be our next manager, that's hard for any English boss to turn down, isn't it? But we're a long way down the line there. I mean, if England win this thing, then it's Southgate's job if he wants it, isn't it? You know, so as we'll get to later, England aren't my top favourites to win it, but I do think they're going there with a really good chance.
The group then, there's a really good chance you're going to be looking at maximum points there.
Yeah, although I think it's trickier than maybe some people are making out. I mean, I think so. Serbia are a fairly unbalanced team. They've got strengths going forward. Clearly, up here in the northeast, we all know about Mitrovic. You know, he's still their kind of main man. You've got Vlahovic, you've got Milinkovic, Savic. Defensively, I think there's major question marks over Serbia, and that will be my hope that even if England are a little bit loose at the back on Sunday, I'd back them to cause real problems for the Serbian defence. Denmark, well, we know last time round in the Euros, England needed extra time to get past Denmark in the semi-finals. Since then, they've added Rasmus Højlund to it. Admittedly, some of their other players are getting, you know, fairly long in the teeth, Eriksen being the prime example. But I think Denmark will be well organised, you know, typically Scandinavian, if you like, hard to break down, just like they were in that last Euros. I think Slovenia are the weakest team in the group. I think they'll probably finish bottom of the group. Sesko, obviously, up front is their main threat, who has just come out in the last couple of days and said he's staying at Leipzig when Arsenal were all over him wanting him. So, you know, he is a world-class talent they've got up front, but they don't have an awful lot else. So, listen, it's one of the easier groups. There are definitely 2 or 3 groups that if you put England into them are much harder than this. So there can be no excuses for England, but I don't think it's an absolute gimme that they just go and win all 3 games, simple as that.
And we see it so often early on in a tournament, don't we? When teams are so wary not to lose, when it's cagey. You know, how many early 0-0, 1-1 England draws have we seen over the years?
Yeah.
That Denmark game, potentially hard fought draw. When you look at it,
yeah, I think it's one of those, isn't it? If England beat Serbia, then a draw against Denmark is okay. Clearly, if something's gone wrong in the Serbia game, then the Denmark game takes on a completely different hue. But yeah, you could see it being a 7-point group, couldn't you? Wins over Serbia and Slovenia and a draw with Denmark. And I think even though that would potentially leave you at risk of finishing second rather than finishing top, and the way the draw works, that could be really important, because if England are top, they get a third-placed team in the second round. Admittedly, they're on track to meet France in the semis if France win their group. If England finish second, they'll play Germany in the first knockout round if Germany win their group. And a last 16 game against Germany in Germany, that's a real humdinger, that, isn't it?
Yeah. How do you see that? How do you see that group playing out then? Before we move on to others, you fancy in England?
I think England will win it. Although I'm not convinced they'll have 9 points. I think England will win it. I think Denmark will finish second, and I think Serbia will finish third. And then it'll be a case of, with either 3 or 4 points, will that get them through as one of the third place teams?
And you touched on it there. England will play one of the third place in D, E, or F, which Austria. Maybe. I mean, clearly we're just plucking names out.
Yeah. I mean, looking at Austria, maybe a Ukraine, maybe a Czech Republic, maybe a Turkey. I mean, clearly all of those options. Now, you know, we're surmising an awful lot here. One of the group seeds could end up finishing third in those groups randomly, but it feels like any of those options are an awful lot easier than Germany in Germany straight away in the last 16, which, like I say, is looming large for whoever finishes second in this group.
We'll rattle through the groups then, and we won't talk about each one in great detail, obviously, but we'll just touch on it and maybe make our calls for who's going through. Group A, which obviously kicks off on Friday night: Germany, Scotland, Hungary, Switzerland. That's a tricky group.
It's a hard group for Scotland, I think. So Germany, you know, home advantage, probably not the side they've been at some tournaments in the past. But I think if you look through that team, you know, Musiala clearly stands out a long way. Havertz will probably play in the same kind of false 9 role as he's been playing in with Arsenal. Defensively, they're strong. I mean, you know, the likes of Mats Hummels haven't even made the squad. So I think Germany Germany will be there or thereabouts in this tournament. I don't think they'll win it because I don't think when push comes to shove, they've quite got the firepower that they might need. But I'd be really surprised if they didn't win this group. I think their opening game against Scotland will be tricky just because it's the opening game. There's so much expectation. I wouldn't be absolutely shocked if that finished in a draw. But I think Scotland might have to get something out of it because I think Hungary and Switzerland are... Well, you could make the argument that they're both stronger than any of the other three teams in England's group. I mean, Switzerland perennially do well at tournaments, generally get through the groups and then lose in one of their early knockout games. They were very good in qualifying. Hungary, as I say, wiped the floor with England in the Nations League and, you know, have a pretty exciting team. Szoboszlai from Liverpool, obviously their kind of talisman, their superstar, their captain. I think all three of those teams will get through, and I think Scotland will finish bottom of the group. What do you think of Scotland?
I think it's a decent enough Scotland team. The problem is, like you said there, I think the three other teams are just better. Certainly Germany and Hungary, and I think the problem is if they were to lose that opening game against Germany, it puts so much pressure on the next two games. You'd need 4 points, wouldn't they? You're looking at 4 points for
you might scrape through with 3, but you're probably going to need 4. I'm
with you. I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that Scotland get something out of Germany on Friday night. But if my head's on the block, I'm going for a Germany win, and I just think that leaves Scotland up against it. If that group's tough, Group B, Spain, Croatia, Italy, and Albania.
Yeah,
and poor Albania.
Well, that's it. I mean, if you were wanting to have a flutter on the Euros, and I know you wouldn't get very much of a price here, but Albania to finish bottom of that group feels pretty much nailed on before the word go, doesn't it? I mean, Italy are the reigning champions. It's easy to forget that, isn't it? They haven't been at either of the last 2 World Cups, but then in between it, they won Euro 2020, obviously beating England in the final at Wembley. I mean, they won that tournament without a superstar and without really playing brilliantly at any stage. And you could argue that that's kind of where Italy are at now, that they still haven't really got a superstar. In fact, you know, the defence that was the bedrock of that has started to be broken up a bit. Some of the old faces have kind of gone, and Scalvani, who was probably going to be their star defender, is out injured. So I think there's question marks over it. I think they're vulnerable vulnerable reigning champions holders. I think Spain looks strong. I think they've got a bit more about them, this Spanish side, than some of the previous ones who were really attractive and dominated possession, but just did nothing with the football when they had it. I think there's a bit more edge to Spain this time. I think it'll be really interesting to see if Lamine Yamal, the youngster, the kind of flying winger that they've got, gets a chance, because I think he could be a superstar. Rodri will clearly be kind of integral to everything Spain are doing, just like he is whenever he plays for Man City. I think they'll win the group. I think Croatia will get through, and I wouldn't rule out Croatia finishing above Italy and making Italy have to sweat for 3rd place because, you know, it's easy to forget, but Croatia have been to the last 4 of major tournaments fairly regularly in the last decade. And yes, it's an aging team. Yes, Modric is still there. You know, yes, we know all these Croatian players and they've been there and done it, but not quite being able to get over the line. But that experience, I think, will help them in such a difficult group. And so I would go Spain to win it, Croatia 2nd, Italy 3rd, having to wonder if they're going to get through or not.
We've obviously been through Group C, which is England's. Group D, Poland, Holland, Austria, France. It's another tricky group. And, the more you look at them, the more you realise really how fortunate England have been, I think, haven't you?
That's exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And I think in this group, just as I would be confident in saying Albania would finish bottom, I'd be confident in saying Poland will finish bottom here. I think that they're, they struggled to live up to their billing when they had Lewandowski at his absolute peak and some real talent around him. I think you can argue that Lewandowski's best days are behind him now, and the support cast is nowhere near as strong. So I think they'd finish bottom. France, for me, deserve to be favourites to win the whole thing. You could make a very strong case that they were the best side in Qatar. only to lose, obviously, on penalties to Argentina in the final. They've arguably got even stronger since then. Any of their defenders, I think, walks into the England team. And that's before you get to Mbappe, Griezmann, Giroud, Dembele,
the usual suspects.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we could go on and on and on, couldn't we? They look really, really strong. I think the question mark over France maybe is, do they live up to their billing in the absolute biggest games? Not always. You remember back to the last Euros and they suffered a real kind of shock exit when everyone was expecting them to waltz through it. The Netherlands, I think, are a team that are in transition. There are some, exciting young players coming through. Simon's being at the top of that list. There's still some experience in there, but I don't think it's a vintage Netherlands team. I think Austria. Here we go. Dark horses, maybe.
Well, you've ticked one off. I was going to come back to that.
I think they're going to be better than a lot of people think. They're obviously managed by Ralph Rangnick, who didn't do particularly great at all at Man United, but has been hugely successful everywhere else he's been. The massive blow for them was David Alaba getting a cruciate and being ruled out. He is their captain. He's their kind of key man. But I think they've got some good young players. They look really good in qualifying. I think they'll get out of this group, whether it's second or third. I think they'll get through. So I think France, the Netherlands, and Austria will all get through. And just as I could see Croatia finishing above Italy, I can see Austria finishing above the Netherlands.
Which would potentially mean an England-Netherlands.
Potentially, yeah.
Would from an England perspective, would you rather be playing the Netherlands than Austria in the last 16?
I think for all that I've said that there, I think you'd probably rather be playing Austria because it would feel like such a big leap for them to be able to beat England. Whereas the Netherlands, even if they'd finished third in that group and had a wobble, would go into the England game fancying they could win it and do something. You know what I mean? I think either of those, though, clearly are preferable to play in Germany first up. And
the last two groups, E and F, look maybe more open than the others. E, Belgium, Slovakia, Romania, Ukraine. This isn't the Belgium force of a few years ago.
No, it absolutely isn't. That said, they've landed quite lucky there. I think this is probably the weakest group. You're right. Again, Lukaku's still there. De Bruyne is still there. So, the core of that golden generation, if you like, is still kind of hanging around. Is there the support cast to supplement them? I'd argue maybe not. Trossard's obviously come through and will be a good addition to that. I don't see Belgium figuring in, say, the last four, but I think they might well end up winning this group. Ukraine needed a playoff to get through. In fact, they needed penalties in a playoff to get through. But I think they're probably the second best team in this group.
I do.
Again, there's some young talent coming through there. Obviously, they have got the top scorer in La Liga last season in Dovbek. There's some exciting players in that Ukrainian team, particularly in attack. I think they're a better side than either Romania or Slovakia, for all that they only finished third in their qualifying group. So I would go Belgium and Ukraine to finish 1 and 2. And I wonder if this will be a group where they win enough games that the other two don't make it, and this isn't the third place team going through. Romania, Slovakia. Obviously, Slovakia will have Martin Dubravka from Newcastle in goal. But it feels to me like those two could struggle.
And finally, Turkey, Georgia, Portugal, Czech Republic. Well, clearly Portugal are the big favourites to win that group. Turkey are a funny one, aren't they? Because there was so much talk about them previously, and then they're disappointed. But it's going to be Portugal winning the group, isn't it? And a battle to follow.
I think so. And without ruining where we're going to go next, I'm very, very big on Portugal. I think they have the strongest squad in the tournament. I think they've got match winners right. I mean, Ronaldo's going to hog the headlines. And if there is a concern, it's does it become the Cristiano Ronaldo show to the detriment of Portugal as a whole? Now, Martinez seems to have actually been able to get hold of that better than a number of his predecessors. the acid test will come if he wants to bring Ronaldo off after an hour. What happens then? Because we know the ego you're dealing with there. But assuming that Ronaldo stays in harness and in tandem with everything else that's going on, then you just look all the way through that squad from Diaz at the back, Bernardo Silva, Rafael Leao, João Felix. They're a squad that's absolutely stacked, I think, with talent. So I think they'll win this group. And then, as I say, we'll get the rest of the tournament. You're right about Turkey. For what seems like a long time now, we've been hearing stories about Turkish footballers having a renaissance. Well, again, and I think this is a theme of this tournament. They've got some really exciting young players this time round. I think they've got 3 teenagers in their squad, and they all might start, which is more than any other team at the tournament. And I do think it's a tournament where like the next generation will break through, if you like. I think we'll see quite a number of strong performances from players in their late teens or early 20s. So I think Turkey will have enough to finish second. Georgia, I think, will finish bottom. Might be the worst team at the whole tournament, certainly the lowest ranked. I think Czech Republic might have enough to get through as a third place team, but I'd be reasonably confident in Portugal, Turkey, Czech Republic, Georgia in that order.
Let's get to the big shouts then when we get to the business end. You've touched on it there. Who are your winners?
I'm going Portugal. Yeah, I'm going Portugal. They're only about 4th or 5th favourites, but I just think they were the best team in qualifying. They had the best attacking record and the best defensive record, and that was in a reasonably okay group. I don't see that they've got an awful lot of weaknesses, and I think that they've also got a good draw. They can cruise through their group. Assuming they win their group, they don't play another group winner until the semi-finals. So straight away, the draw's on their side. I'm reasonably big on Portugal. What about you?
And sorry, just quickly on Portugal.
Yeah.
13-2 is a big price.
It is. I think it is. I would have Portugal. I think France should be favourites, and I'd have Portugal pretty much level with England as second favourites. But for me, even without the price, if they were all the same price, I'd be going Portugal. But at the prices, I think Portugal. If you're going to have a bet on who's going to win it, I think Portugal are a cracking bet.
I think France. I just think they've got so many match winners, so many big game players. Yeah. But I think there's a balance. I think there's the balance to the team as well. To completely take your point, they've maybe disappointed in the past when they've gone in with big billing, and I'm staggered really that they're not favourites.
Yeah,
because I think if you put France versus England in a game tomorrow,
France will be favourites. Yeah, I think so, because you can argue that there's not an awful lot between the two attacks, but the French defence is a long way superior to the English defence. I think that's arguable.
Dark horses, surprise package.
Yeah, I've kind of alluded to both there. I think Austria and Turkey will do better than people think, and I would throw Hungary into that as well. I mean, the Euros is a tournament where, aside from an unfancied side, tends to make the semi-finals. We've had Wales, Greece obviously won it. Turkey got to the semi-finals. I think it was 2008. Denmark obviously got to the semi-finals last time round. I don't think it's nailed on that the last 4 will be all the group seeds, all the big boys. I think there'll be one that upsets the apple cart. And I think Austria and Turkey and Hungary. If you said pick one of those, I'd go Hungary, I think.
Yeah, I think Hungary and Austria, and I know you touched on it. I also think Ukraine, because I think they're a better team than the qualifying suggested.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the draw's like. So clearly, they might well get.
Yeah, well, obviously, though all of those teams, if they finish third, then
they're going to have to beat someone.
Look who they end up against, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. So the draw will be a factor for any of them having a run, because you look at when Wales made it, and the draw kind of worked for them a bit. I know they beat Belgium, but the draw did work for them, and you can argue the same about Denmark at the last Euros, really.
Finally, England.
Semi-final defeat to France.
Yeah. It's kind of like, Yeah.
I'd love to be able to sit here and massively bullishly say we're going to win it, we're going to do it. I can see it being the familiar story under Southgate, where they look actually really pretty good in the groups, get a bit of win behind them, but then come up against a real top notcher, and yeah, I can see England losing to France in the semis and then France losing to Portugal in the final. That I'll go with that.
Yeah, I won't go as specific, but I think England to get knocked out by France in the semis. It's like the classic case as well, isn't it? Of the time when you meet a top class team, yeah. But as you say, right at the top of Southgate, I think there's every chance England go out, not in kind of glorious failure, but go out having not enhanced the reputation, but with the reputation.
Yeah.
But at some point, the questions start to be asked, don't they? Well, when are you going to start?
Well, that's it. If it's 4 times when you've got banging on the door but not quite bashed it open, then yeah, questions will be asked. I mean, I think sometimes you have to remember that actually getting to a quarterfinal, a semi-final, or a final historically for England is still a massive achievement. And I think when the Southgate era is reassessed in years to come, I think it will be seen as something of a golden period, and I think it deserves to be. But by the same token, if you're getting close to winning a tournament, eventually you've got to win one.
Let's hope that's this summer. Let's hope England bring it home, and you come home with them because you're heading out there this weekend for the first game.
Keep an eye on the Northern Echo website and everything. Yeah, I'm going to be out there. There'll be loads of videos. I'll be in and around the England fans, trying to get a bit of the colour, a bit of the atmosphere. Might even sample a couple of the German beverages to see how they go down at some stage. But there'll also be plenty of reports and everything. And yeah, as you said right at the start, thanks to you, Fiverr, for sponsoring all our coverage. We'll be doing some stuff in and around with that out in Germany too.
Yeah, keep your eye on the YouTube channel. Keep your eye on the site, obviously. We'll have more to come from Scott over the next couple of weeks. Take care. Thanks for watching.